there's so many conditions out there that the VA can give you benefits and compensation for that they had no clue. They did not realize. If you grind your teeth at night, that's up to 30%. If you've ever had dry eyes in your life, that's 10%. If you've ever been scared, what do you think happens to your hands?
They get sweaty.
That's 30%.
For real? Buddy, here's another episode of Boosted Suits. I'm James Pitts. I have Herbert Garcia with me, and we are blessed to have AJ Tyler as our guest today. Me and AJ go way back to our young sailor days. Did a couple combat tours together. Now we're both retired. Welcome, AJ. AJ, would you start with telling us a little bit about your bio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Navy in June of 1999, and I started out at 1st Marine Division. Was my first duty station as a hospital corpsman, and after about 3 years there, I went to Naval Health Clinic Hawaii, which was kind of a weird time because, that was around 2004 to 2008, and we were like really in the thick of OIF and OEF. So I only spent about a year and a half on shore duty in Hawaii before I was augmented, and I ended up over at 3rd Marines for about a year and a half to deploy in support of OEF. And then when I came back from that tour, I had a few months left on shore duty. My detailer told me I had to go back to sea, and then being a field medical technician, they sent me right back to the Marines. So I did some time back in Camp Pendleton again, second go around. From there, I started out at 1st Combat Engineer Battalion with you, James. Did a couple of deployments with 1st CEB. After about 2 years, I went to 511. I was at 511 for about a year, and then once I made chief, they kicked me out of the battalion, sent me over to regiment, and I did my last year there at 11th Reg. And then as soon as I was done, I went to Hawaii, Fort Island, Center for Security Forces. I did that for 3 years, which was good duty. It was really the first time I got to get exposed to all the different rates of the Navy. It was really my first Navy command. And I ended up making senior chief there. After 3 years of shore duty in Paradise, I was up for sea duty again, and I thought that I'd get to do something different. But being a field medical technician, they said, "Oh, well, you've got to go back to the Marines." So I ended up going back to the Marine Corps side. So I ended up at 3 MEF in Okinawa. Did 3 years in Okinawa with 3 MEF, and then with 3 MHG, and then from there I requested to put in a package for the command program to be a command master chief, and I got selected for it 2017. So once I got selected for it, picked up master chief, went to my first command, the USS Pioneer, which is a minesweeper, one of the last wooden fleets of the Navy. Very much like Combat Engineer Battalion, but on a ship. So, instead of looking for IEDs, we're looking for mines. And did that for about 18 months. And then they moved me over to a bigger deck, to an amphib, which was good because our primary weapon system is the United States Marine Corps, which I was very familiar with. And I was a CMC on USS Germantown for almost 3 years. And then I said, you know what? I've been on sea duty operational for the last 8 years. It's time to go back to shore duty. So I finished off my career at Navy Talent Acquisition Group in Houston. 2 years there in the recruiting field as command master chief, and then I retired early this year, 2023.
Man, congratulations on your retirement. Congratulations. What do you do now, and what do you do now that specifically helps vets?
So today I am a disability benefits, education, and services consultant for a private company just for veterans. Kind kind of fell into my lap. Not really what I wanted to do. I had big dreams and aspirations of doing absolutely nothing after retirement. And you run into so many people. You make you build such a vast network of good people throughout your time in the military. And I just happened to run into a good friend of mine that I was stationed in Okinawa with, who I'd also been stationed in Hawaii with back in 2005. But he got me into this business, and I immediately realized that it's something that I'm good at. I think it's just because as a senior enlisted leader, James, we we took care of people, right? We took care of people for 20 years, and it's just something that comes natural to us, and it's just something that came natural to me. So it made a lot of sense. And that's how I got into what I'm doing today.
All right. So a lot of what you do is you help vets with their VA claims, correct?
Absolutely. I help veterans maximize on their disability. And it's not just compensation, but I also provide a lot of additional educational services too, when it comes to their benefits. And it just depends on what state they're living in, what type of special programs they're already involved with. I have a lot of clients that are not veterans. I have clients that are caretakers, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters of veterans that I'm working with to help their loved ones continue to get the help and support. So it's not just it's not just compensation, but it's all facets of benefits, VA benefits.
That's awesome, man, because what we see all the time is we see about how bad the VA is and how these people get screwed out of their benefits and how they got a low rating. I'm on a couple of Facebook pages where all they do is talk about VA claims and how they got screwed over. It's good to see that there's people like you guys out there helping these vets get to what they deserve, because it sucks, man. Like when you're going through that process and you're going with doctor's appointments and what you have to do just to get to what you deserve, Yeah. First topic that I really want to talk about, is really hot in the veteran community, is burn pits.
Okay.
So burn pits, number one, like how to file that claim, and two, if you're already 100% permanent total, should you open up a claim to get into that burn pit registry?
Yeah. No, great question. Great topics. The burn pits, the environmental exposure element of filing a claim, that it's a big part of the PACT Act, for one, and number two, it's a big problem for a lot of veterans, especially those who have served in areas where those environmental hazards were prevalent. You've got the burn pit registry, which is good, right? That gets your name on the docket. It identifies yourself as somebody who's been exposed to, those environmental elements. But the big thing when it comes to filing a claim that has to do with those environmental hazards is you've got to have the evidence to show that you were there. So your DD-214 is usually going to cover that, regardless if you're in the burn pit registry or not. That DD-214 is going to have that campaign medal that shows that you were either in support of, on the ground, at sea, or in the air, and even if it was just for a day. A lot of veterans think that you have to be boots on ground to have exposure to certain environmental elements, and that's just not the case at all. But your DD-214 is going to be the big supporting evidence for that. And then obviously you've got to have the condition in your health record that shows that you're having some type of complication, or you were seen in the past for it, or having issues, due to that environmental hazard.
So you could take, let's use me for an example, right? I'm 100% ENT. I was diagnosed with asthma right before retiring due to the burn pits. So I came in, I never had asthma. I got diagnosed right before retirement. Would I be a person that you would suggest to try to get on that registry and reopen my case?
Yeah, absolutely. You being at 100%, there's probably not going to be a monetary gain compensation wise, from it. Unless you're, for somebody who's not at 100%, and you've had that exposure and you're exhibiting those signs and symptoms, you've been diagnosed with asthma, I absolutely, asthma is presumptive. So, if that's something that you were diagnosed with after your military service, it's already presumed that because of your service in those areas uh, where the environmental hazard was present, um, your chances or odds of getting, winning that claim are more likely than not favorable in your convenience, in your case. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely.
Are there any disadvantages for the guys that are 100% P&T to reopen a case to add, let's say?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's not just the burn pits, right? I mean, if you're at 100% P&T, there's always a disadvantage. There could be residual conditions because they're going to do additional testing for that, right? They might do X-rays. They might have you do a pulmonary function test or whatever new diagnostic tools that are available out there today. I mean, they could look into it. They could look into your claim deep enough to have to reevaluate your current conditions. And if you have current conditions that are tied to maybe that are fallout or secondary to it, they're going to look at those too, and there's always a disadvantage or a risk there that, if you have a condition that maybe you haven't been keeping up with, maybe you haven't been taking your meds or you haven't been to the VA in quite some time, for a condition that you're currently rated at, and they look at that condition because you filed for, a new claim, there's always a risk of getting decreased. So, I always tell my clients that, you've got to keep up with all of your conditions. Just because you're at 100%, even if you're at P&T, if something comes up, you want to make sure that you are continuing to take care of yourself. You're continuing to, refill on your medications, go to your appointments, do your therapy, keep up with it.
Okay. So the biggest advice, especially like to the older, that's like the guys that were before us, is to continue, because a lot of them, excuse me, when they get P&T, they stop going,
right?
Because they think they're done, right? Everything is done. They can't get it pulled away. That's really good advice that, keep maintaining those appointments, refilling your meds. Especially the Wounded Warriors, the guys that got out, that use like Semper Fi Fund and the other organizations for assistance. Those organizations are going to ask to see your VA appointment. So they're going to want to see if you're still active within the VA, and that's going to be one of the biggest things that they use to either grant you what you need or to say no.
Exactly.
What about with transitioning service members, whether they're getting ready to separate or whether they're getting ready to retire? I know that's two huge different topics, but what do you see as the biggest mistake that these transitioning service members are making on their claims that's not helping them get to where they need to be? Is it,
right,
for example, documentation in their medical record not being complete prior to separating? Is it based off of how they wrote it up or who they saw? Because with all these people that are unsatisfied with their claim, there has to be something that they're even doing something wrong. It can't be the entire institution of the VA that's just screwing everybody over. I think that might be some of the service members that didn't educate themselves on the claim and how to do it and who to talk to properly, and just try to do it like blind, and they're not happy with what they receive.
Yeah, it's interesting and frustrating at the same time, right? Because, for one, for transitioning service members, I can say this because I just went through it. They don't give you a lot of information. When you go through that transition, you start attending TAPS, GPS, whatever they call it now, there's not a lot of information that is out there. And the information that is, you're already usually in that 3-month window or 6-month window prior to getting out. And it's just not a whole lot of time to prep, right? So number one, I mean, it's not something that is they're not educating service members early enough on the process. So you've got BDD, which is for transitioning service members. You can file your claim for disability compensation up to 180 days before your end of active duty service date. One of the big mistakes that I see is documentation is one for sure. A lot of those things creep up right? We as service members, I think especially those that served in and around the Marine Corps, I've seen it a lot. It's, we're not good at going to, we're not good at going to see Doc. We don't want to get taken out of the fight for any reason at all. And so, we're kind of brought up in that environment where, it's either, you suck it up and hope that it gets better. And then if it doesn't, once I get back to the rear, I'll go to medical and get something checked out. Well, by the time I get back to the rear, I don't want to lose my time off and time away from home or the weekend or whatnot. So it's just a lot easy to just not do it. And so what ends up happening is you have a lot of issues that don't ever get documented. James, I mean, man, it was a lot easier to self-treat, and a lot of times those conditions, they just don't get documented, right? So these transitioning service members are having to go back, set up appointments. When they go and get their appointments, now they got to get a consult to see a specialist. They go see that specialist. That specialist may want them to do physical therapy for the next 9 weeks, and next thing you know, they have to file a claim or they're either on their way out the door. And so it's just not a fully developed treatment plan, and so a lot, it usually turns out unfavorable for the veterans. So that's one issue that I see, the lack of awareness, the education early on, and then preparation. They also don't tell you what type of supporting evidence you really need to, put together when you're filing a claim. A lot of veterans, what I'm seeing is for the transitioning guys is, they're going online to the VA website, they're doing their VA claims, or they're going through a VSO or whoever, or however they do it. And they don't have the right supporting evidence. And that's a big part of the process, is to make sure that you have enough evidence. You want to make it as easy as possible on the VA.
No, I get that. Is there any advice for like the service members who say are coming up on their 20 years, had an injury, at their 5-6 year mark and never got it documented? Is it too late because they self-treated, or can they go back and have something annotated in their records in hopes that that'll benefit them once they transition out?
Yeah, as long as they're still active, it's not too late. I had a veteran recently that I'm still working with. He actually broke his finger on a ship, and he went down to medical. And this was like 5 years ago, but he went down to medical. The doc told him that it was dislocated, and he never got it really treated until his last, I think he was within his last year of getting out. He finally went back, as his finger's all deformed, and he went and got x-rays done, and the x-rays showed that he had a lot of scarring on his bone that showed that there was a fracture there. So that was something that he got officially diagnosed, I think, almost 3 or 4 years after the injury occurred. And and the VA recognized that because he filed a claim for it.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor of the show, MG3 Media. MG3 Media specializes in real estate media and marketing. If you are looking for an experienced team to capture incredible photos, videos, and virtual tours for your listings, MG3 Media is the team for you. Their photos have been featured in multiple magazines, and they have been trusted to create stunning videos for multi-million-dollar listings all across Southern California. Right now, MG3 Media is offering listeners of the Boots to Suits podcast 25% off their first photo shoot. Just go to mg3-media.com and click schedule now. Use promo code BOOTS2SUITS. That's Boots, the number 2 Suits, and get 25% off your next listing photos. I want to take a moment to talk about a sponsor of the podcast, EGA Homes. You may know I am the founder and proud owner of EGA Homes, and we are anything but just another real estate brokerage. We've taken our military values and work ethic and carried it over to the real estate industry. Our team of agents have access to unparalleled marketing tools and training resources that help us grow our business and best help our clients achieve their goals. To learn more about how we can help you buy, sell, and even invest, contact us at info@egahomes.com. And now, back to the show.
So one of my biggest advice, and you can definitely tell me if I'm wrong, that when service members ask me when they should start filing their claim or start prepping, not filing their claim, but prepping, I used to tell them, once you're about 2 years out, you need to start prepping. You need to start going through your medical record, and you need to start going into medical and getting all those things that you've seen for redone, re-diagnosed, and up to date. And I'm like, you don't need to be going to medical every single day, maybe once or twice a month, starting at your 2-year mark, just to get your medical record to where it needs to be. Go to those consults, go to physical therapy, because there's protocol for everything, right? Especially like musculoskeletal, which like they're just not going to send you to ortho. They're going to send you to physical therapy first. Then from physical therapy to ortho. It's just playing like games. When I'm talking about the senior listed, because the biggest problem I was having right before I retired was seeing a lot of these service members, the senior listed guys coming in, like, I'm not signing a claim. I got all 4 limbs. I got all 10 fingers. I got all 10 toes. That's for the guys that got severely injured. But then, you counter it and you look at, for example, the sailors and the Marines that come to the fleet, right out of boot camp, right out of A school or MOS school, and they start complaining about psych issues, and they end up having a kid, and they end up getting separated within like their first year of being at duty, and they're getting 100%. Like, how is that fair? And that's like the thing that I would talk to the service members, especially my guys, about. I'm like, so you served in multiple combat tours, and you're saying that person deserves it more than you? So I know it's a big stigma in a lot of people. One of the guys that I'm going to send you is one that didn't file a claim. Has the amount of information to do it, but just didn't do it. With those, let's just say you had a guy that got out. Let's say, we'll just even say we had a Vietnam vet come across your way, didn't file a claim. Is it too late for that?
Definitely not too late. I've got 6 clients right now, all Vietnam era guys, and they're all at 0% right now. Filing a claim for the first time. We had one guy. Well, I'll tell you that story later. But yeah, so it's definitely not too late. It's sad because a lot of these guys, especially the ones that I'm working with, they didn't want to file a claim because they didn't feel there was anything wrong with it, or they knew a lot of people that went through a lot more shit than they ever did, and they didn't feel like they were worthy. And that's okay for them to think that, that's their personal belief. But I think when you start coming at a certain age and your body starts to feel it more and more, I think you hit that point in your life where you realize, I think, I've got to take care of myself. This isn't about receiving compensation. This isn't about, getting it, getting a check from the VA. This is about getting benefits for my health, that, I'm not able to do on my own anymore, regardless of what I believe in. And that's what I'm seeing right now with a lot of these older veterans. They're realizing that they can't do it on their, they can't do it on their own anymore. They need help. And what's sad is that I tell them that, there's so many conditions out there that the VA can give you benefits and compensation for, that they had no clue. They did not realize.
Dental's one. A lot of people don't realize you can get compensation for dental.
You get compensation if you grind your teeth at night. That's up to 30%. If you've ever had dry eyes in your life, that's 10%. Let me ask you a question. I'm talking about your hands real quick, right? If you've ever been scared, nervous, afraid, anxious, what do you think happens to your hands?
They get sweaty.
That's 30%.
For real?
I'm serious.
Hey, I mean, I didn't know about all that because, when everyone talks about VA claims, they're going for big ticket items. They're not looking in the weeds.
They're not looking into the weeds. I mean, there's so many day-to-day things that people have that they don't even realize. There's so many things, and they don't realize that it's probably stemming from a more deeper rooted issue that they just did not want to dive into, or they may probably felt that it wasn't as severe as the next guy, And so, to answer your question, it's never too late. And my thing is, the earlier, the better. Because it's
So-
all, if, go ahead.
If we went back to like the Vietnam vet, how are you providing proof of their documentation? Because a lot of them, they don't have that documentation for while they were in service.
Right.
Yeah, I heard you can apply and try to get your medical record, but back then they didn't really have good accountability of records.
Yeah.
So for that Vietnam vet that doesn't have his medical record, let's say boots on ground infantry in Vietnam.
Yep.
So we saw some stuff. You know what I mean? How would they go about trying to file that claim without the supporting documentation?
So the first thing they got to do is they've got to go to the National Archives website. They fill out a form to request their entire personnel file, and they can actually request their medical records, DD-214, their service records, and any file document that the military ever had on file. If it was submitted, then they'll have it on file. It takes 8 to 10 minutes. You go on there, it's a 5-step process. They fill it out, and then within 30 days, sometimes less, they'll receive it electronic, and they'll send them a hard copy in the mail. And that's their foundation. That's their document and proof of who they are, where they served, and what they have.
Question for you. So as far as, obviously we know where we're at and we're in California in the year, how does cannabis use affect the VA the claim process for some of these guys? What are some of the advantages, disadvantages? Can you speak on some of that?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on it. I've seen more. It depends on what it's being used for. I'm not a neuropsychologist, so I can't tell you I can't tell you what the psychological part of the decision-making process of, using cannabis to manage your day-to-day life and your condition. I couldn't tell you how that impacts truly the occupational and social functions of a veteran. Their ability to go and do that, use that to treat. I couldn't tell you how that, just that process, how that affects. So, there are some impacts. To answer your question, there are some impacts, and it just depends on what they're using it for. Right.
So we could definitely talk about this topic at length, but you're definitely seeing an increase in cannabis use within the veteran community, right?
Yes.
The veteran community is starting to turn away from all the for
Traditional medicine.
Yeah, traditional medicine for the guys who are dealing with PTSD, right? I know, being a corpsman, that they start with the low dose and they keep trying to creep you up. If it doesn't work, they switch you to another medication. If that doesn't work, you go to another medication. The benefits, they really don't outweigh the risk of the weight gain, the ups and downs of your mood. It's like you're a guinea pig, right? So a lot of the veterans are turning to cannabis use, which even the VA is doing studies on, right? For vets with PTSD, to get away from all those medications and just stick with something that's a little bit more natural, that doesn't have any more side effects, doesn't make them feel like a zombie. That's a lot of the stuff that we hear about from the other vets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm starting to notice a lot more different types of therapies being used. And, personally, I think it's becoming more and more, accepted as an alternative. I haven't seen any huge disadvantages, for veterans that they state that they use cannabis, to treat. But I have noticed it more and more, and it's definitely becoming, a thing for veterans, among other drugs. Yeah, I think it's going to rise, James. Honestly, I think it's going to, we're going to continue to see a lot more resort to that. Another thing too is, for veterans that have multiple conditions, they're on a shitload of drugs, man. I mean, they are.
Kills when I retired.
Yeah. I mean, it is insane. I've got a cocktail list of medications that I am prescribed, and I can tell you that I've been to the ER on more than a few occasions because as a side effect of some of the medications that I'm taking. I mean, it's like, it's fucking up my kidneys. I'm getting abdominal pains here and there. depending on what time I take it and what I'm, if I've eaten or not, or if if I've consumed enough water. All these variables and factors, and it's just becoming a lot more and more. It's becoming more and more challenging. So it's easy. It's easy to to see veterans use an alternative to help them through some of the issues that they're experiencing, for sure.
The biggest topic that I really wanted to talk to you about is going to be Camp Lejeune and the water issue with those members back from the 80s and early 90s, I believe, that were out there that dealt with that contaminated water, that are now, the VA is not really, they're having all difficult times running their compensation in. Can you talk about that and maybe a different outlook and how to look at it and filing your claim if they're hitting roadblocks with the VA?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone for anyone that meets the criteria for exposure, in this case, the Camp Lejeune water, for anyone that falls into that category, number one, you've got to make sure that you got the documentation to show that you were stationed there. You were there within that time frame. Number two, if you have been diagnosed with the condition, it's important to make sure that you get that documentation, because that's what you're going to want to submit to the VA when you file for a disability and compensation. You want to submit that as evidence. That's going to be the number one thing, and having the documentation, having the supporting evidence to show that you were there. Those are the two most biggest things that anybody should have going into it.
Have you seen anyone approve with these claims yet, or from?
I have not. But what I can tell you is that they're going to treat it the same way that they would any other claim. So they're going to treat the condition, or I mean, not treat the condition, but they're going to evaluate the condition. They're going to look at the circumstances under which you got it, as a presumptive, meaning that if you were in that area or location where you had exposure, and then you develop this condition after the fact, that's what they're gonna label it as a presumptive, and then they're going to evaluate the condition itself, right? So you don't have to worry about that service connection, so to speak, right? But yes, they will evaluate it just like any other condition. If you developed a cancer, they're going to assess you for that.
The other thing, right before we kick off, if you were here right now sitting in front of two transitioning service members, what advice would you give them getting ready for them to file their claim?
All right. So what I would tell you is make sure that you've got all your medical records, your documentation, anything that you have any concern about, and it doesn't matter what it is. If it's bothering you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, go and talk to someone. Go see someone, get treated for it, inquire, ask questions, and see if there's anything there. Get it documented, because you may not be exhibiting those signs and symptoms today, and maybe you aren't. But if you're not, that's something that could potentially come out 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? I will tell you to submit your claim early, 180 days out. Do it 180 days out. And that way they will, the VA can make a decision at your end of active duty service date, and then you can receive your disability compensation, as scheduled, which is, I think, 2 months after your last day of service. But you do it early. You do it early so that, you can maximize up front. Go see a VSO. Go see a veteran service officer. They will look through your record, and they will tell you exactly what VA forms you've got to fill out, to start the process and to file a claim. Do all of that early, 180 days, so that you're not falling behind when you get close to your end of active duty service date.
Do you have anything else, Ron?
No, I think that was a good one.
All right. Do you have anything for us, AJ?
Dan, Um, I don't think I do. It's just, it's just an absolute pleasure, to be able to, just to be here to have a conversation with you, with both of you. It's not every day that we get to connect, share our thoughts, engage in some fellowship and to help fellow veterans out. This is truly a blessing. I appreciate the opportunity, James, Herb, and, I hope that we can continue doing things like this in the future for other veterans, help them out, help others out, and give each other the platform, to make a difference. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
If there's any veterans out there or transitioning service members trying to get in contact with you for your service, how would they go about that?
Call me, text me. Majority of the veterans that I help out have been through referrals. I get phone calls and text messages every single day. My number is 808-374-2944. My email is aj@justforveterans.com. And if you go on Facebook, you do a search, AJ Tyler, you'll see my page there. But usually a phone call or text message, best way to get in touch with me, and I'll always get back to you same day.